Thank you, Danny, for doing this. This is our 10th, 12th year. I don't know how we're doing this, and you've been such a great sport about sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, and doing it in front of the Tiger faithful. And Scott has his pen down, his camera up. That's all he can do today. So,
but I can always trust Scott to know what to put and what not to put in paper.
But here we are at the All-Star break, and that's normally time for a report card. And it's when you read the Tigers Extra online, of course the sports writers are having a field day at this point. So from your perspective, Dan, kind of where do you see things?
Well, I'd like to say there is some good in the good, bad, and the ugly, but right now it's primarily the bad and the ugly, because the wins and losses are always correlated to payroll. And with us having an extraordinarily high payroll and not generating any kind of a sustained success with our one-loss record, I think we're all at this point sitting on pins and needles waiting to see what happens as we approach the trade deadline. This has probably been, no, not probably, this has easily been the most frustrating year that I've had with the Tigers, for a number of reasons. I mean, first and foremost, we have a club with a high payroll and high expectations. Secondly, it's been a tough year for us because we lost Mr. Illich, and we weren't able to bring to Detroit for him what we had all hoped, which was winning a World Series. We all knew how badly he wanted that for Detroit. Not for himself, but for the city. And we fell short. And there's a lot of remorse over not having been able to deliver for him thus far, for the community, because we have been given all the necessary resources to bring that World Series to Detroit. And we're also facing the real prospect that we may have to go into a rebuild mode. I think that's the reality of where we are right now. And no one knows what we could potentially be facing when you go into a rebuild mode, not just from a one-loss standpoint on the field, but in a place like Detroit, who has so wildly supported the Tigers over the years, in an area as hard hit economically as Detroit in the state of Michigan, and for us to have had the support through the dozen years that I've been here speaks volumes for just how rabid the fan base is in Detroit. And if we do go into that rebuild mode, it's going to be a challenge, it's going to be a struggle, and consequently there's going to be a fall off. Attendance will take a dip, season ticket sales will take a hit, perhaps corporate sponsorships may drop off somewhat, and it's sort of a multifaceted dilemma that the Tigers have to deal with corporately. It's not just what happens on the field if we go into rebuild mode. There are a lot of tentacles to doing something like that. That said, going into a rebuild mode obviously means having to move assets. And while we can read all day long about why the Tigers should trade this guy or that guy. Ultimately, you have to have a taker, and that's not a given. And you can be certain that Al is not going to move assets unless we get something significant in return. That's not a given. That's not a guarantee. So these next couple of weeks are going to play out real interesting. I mean, I think the reality of where we are right now, we're in a huge hole. And even if we recover and we start the second half off well, I mean, realistically, right now, you're talking about trying to get that one wild card spot. And when you're evaluating how good you are or how not good you are, at this stage of the game for the Tigers, the evaluation has to center around, are we good enough to go deep into the playoffs? And I think the answer to that question right now is an obvious no. I don't think we're good enough to go deep in the playoffs. That said, wild things have happened in this business. And sometimes it isn't the best team that goes deep. It's the team that's playing the best at the time the playoffs start. And could that happen to us? Sure it could. But I think there are going to be some very, very difficult decisions that are going to have to be made here as we lead up to July 31. And my sense is if we can get what we're looking for from some of our more significant pieces, I think we'll move in that direction. The reality of it is we haven't won a World Series with the guys that we've had. And as much as everybody is hanging on this hope that here we are, we've got one last chance, we've got one last opportunity to take a swing at this. Well, we know we're not going to add payroll. We're not going to add anybody else. Al's not going to go out and swing a deal that's going to bring us a veteran guy who might help us get over the hump. That's not happening. So we've all hung to this hope that at some point we were going to turn this around this year. We were going to recover nicely, get back into the race. It just hasn't happened.
So, if you move assets, and presumably that means you're moving your bigger contracts, your bigger names, some of your bigger names, and you have to fill those. And not only now, but in the near future. Talk about the farm system. What's the state of the Tigers farm system?
It's better than it has been in recent years. Because what took place prior to a couple of years ago, when we were all in and doing whatever we could to get the necessary pieces to try and win, Mr. Illich wasn't concerned with what we might look like 5, 10, 15 years down the road. He wanted to win. So Dave Dombrowski had the mandate to do whatever was necessary. And of course, that involved either trading away young prospects or signing free agents that cost us a number one pick. And there was a price to pay for that. But we knew that. You know going into that strategy that there's going to be a price to pay. And we have paid the price. But now we're into this second year, if you will, of a different philosophical approach where we've got to rebuild the organization through the draft. We've got to be able to replenish what we've lost. And while I was telling Hal, no one in this business ever gets to a place where you say, we're good now. Okay, we've reached our goal. We've reached our objectives. That doesn't happen on the player development side. That's a continual work in progress. You're always working, you're always striving to get better. And we have. The unanswered question is, these young guys that have come into the system the past 3 years, are these guys going to, when you talk about projectability, which is all what scouting is all about, are these guys going to bring us success at the major league level like we hope they are? I think we've got a healthy core of young players coming up. There will be a player or two who may rise through the ranks that we didn't anticipate, who will contribute for us at the major league level. There will be players that we know that we're going to be counting on to bring us success at the major league level. That'll happen. There will be a player or two that you were counting on to bring success at the major league level, and it won't work out like you would have hoped to. That's just all part and parcel of what happens when you're developing over 200 and some odd players through your system. As we've talked about on many occasions, the draft is a crapshoot. Our game is littered with stories about number 1, number 2, number 3 draft picks who haven't worked out for whatever reason, and guys whom you've taken in the lower rounds who've turned out to be pretty decent major league players. I mean, I think we all look back on somebody like Mike Piazza, who was a 62nd round pick, who was in the Hall of Fame. Those things don't happen often, but they do. And scouting, as we know, probably is the most difficult job in baseball. Those are the unsung heroes. I mean, those guys who don't make a lot of money, who have to go out and get in the trenches and find out who the players are out there that can lead us to the promised land. I mean, everybody can spot a good ball player. It's the scout who's getting out there and looking for the player that maybe no one else is seeing that makes the difference. But I think you can say from a developmental standpoint, we've seen our worst days. And I think we're on the upswing. It takes time to go from having a low-ranked system to one that's ranked within the top 5 or the top 10. That doesn't happen overnight. And through the years, we've been ranked near the bottom of the industry when it comes to minor league prospects, for reasons that I had alluded to earlier. But I think brighter days are ahead. I know that may mean some very, very difficult days ahead with the Major League Club. But anytime you go into that rebuild mode, it's going to be painful, it's going to be challenging. And this is a cyclical business. I mean, every team goes through that, where you'll have your very good years, and hopefully you've had the good fortune to capture a World Series title within that the upcycle. But when you go through the downturn is when you really get tested, when your patience gets tested, because once the adversity hits, it becomes a real challenge, and we may be there.
How's your sense of humor?
Ask my wife; she'll tell you.
Thank you, everybody.
See you, Pete.
See you, Peter.
Yeah, it's when you're in this business, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, hockey, it doesn't matter. If you're not winning, it trickles all the way down throughout the organization. Amy can tell you, she feels it. When you're losing, the little problems become very big problems, and when you're winning, you can mask over a lot of issues. Winning heals a lot of wounds, right, Hal?
Yes, sir.
And right now, we've got a lot of wounds that aren't being healed very well.
So it takes a while.
It does take a while. And people, I don't listen to radio talk shows, sports radio talk shows, because everybody's an expert. And people don't realize, Hal realizes, but it is so incredibly difficult to sustain winning over a long period of time. It's so difficult to get to the World Series and win a World Series. I often reflect back and I think about the guys that I worked for when I first started out with the Expos. John McHale, Jim Fanning. Those guys never got to a World Series. And they devoted their whole adult life to being in baseball. And I've been blessed and have had the good fortune to be in 3 World Series and won one of them. So I'm hitting .333 in the World Series, and so that's pretty good, right, Hal?
That's right.
But it's so incredibly difficult to win and to sustain winning in this business. And we've done well when it comes to winning. We just haven't been able to get the grand prize.
By the way, Hal's hitting .333 too in that same department.
That's right.
Right? Indians, Twins, and Tigers.
Well, from one year to another, you know, just like the 68 Tigers, we had a lot of breaks. You know, that ball that you hit down the line is just fair. The next year it's foul.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's a lot of things like against Baltimore where it looks like we may blow the whole situation, and Tommy Matchik comes off the bench and hits a home run, which was 1 on and 2 on. I think in the 9th inning he had 3 and 2 on him, and he hits a home run. And you never know, but those things, they just go so far. So I agree with him. It's tough to be a consistent winner.
Well, so to go back to the '68 World Champion, the World's you earned an oyster in '69. It didn't play out as well.
That's right.
With the same team.
That ball went foul.
You know, you think back, okay, in 2006 when we went to the World Series,
Mm-hmm.
I am certain, even though the better team lost that year, that there was a mentality, there was a mindset in the clubhouse that it's okay, we'll get there next year. And lo and behold, right, look what happened. We didn't get there next year. It took us 6 years to get back there. And lost again. To this day, I still believe, I don't know, I could be biased, but we were the better team in both those World Series and lost.
Hal, what advice would you give to Danny at this point? Danny's going through the potential rebuilding process, and you've been there, done that, seen it. You're here to counsel Danny. Danny's in trouble. So, Hal, that's why we brought you here. This is a surprise. So how would you help him?
You got to find the players. That's it. You got to find the players, and you can look at 10, 15 players, and gee, they all look good, but are they good enough to play in the major leagues?
Yeah, that's hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah, and you can say what you want to, but you know we have great managers, but they're not going to be great unless they have great players, and it's difficult. I've been very fortunate being on winning teams, but you're a winner one year and the next year you're not, so you're a different person. Yeah. But it's a lot of fun anyhow.
And you know, Hal's right. I mean, he's exactly right on about you have to have the players to win. I mean, it's as simple as that. Finding them is the real challenge. And today, it's done so much differently than what it was done even 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, because now analytics is playing a role in player procurement. And we've invested heavily, our organization has, in analytics. And most organizations today have to find that blend between scouting and analytics. And that can be tricky, and that can be a sensitive issue sometimes, because analytics and scouting reports don't always mesh. And that's a huge responsibility for a general manager then, to have to decipher what the analytics people are saying, what are the scouts saying, and come up with the right answer. Not easy.
All right, let's have a little humor here. Hal, when I was in the reunion of your 68 team, one of the guys that I interviewed was Gates Brown. And Gates Brown has a hot dog story. Can you recite that? Do you remember that?
Well, Gates, he liked to come to the bullpen, you know. He told me, they always said, I went down with Hal, so I helped warm up the pitchers. Well, that wasn't true, you know. He'd come down, but he never warmed up the pitchers very often, you know. But it was great to have Gates around. He kept everybody alive, you know. But he used to come down because he knew that I would let him eat hot dogs, you know. You know, it's kind of strange, you know. Back then they didn't want you to eat. Now they want you to eat. Mm-hmm. K-Line told me a player didn't have to go out of the ballpark if he didn't want to, or you know, have the meals in the ballpark. But anyhow, so Gates, the story goes, he had hot dogs on him, and he walked out on the dugout to watch a few innings, and for some reason Mayo wanted him for a pinch hitter. So here he is, pinch hitting with hot dogs, a couple of hot dogs under his shirt. and he was a great hitter. He hit a double and he went on his belly. Crushed those hot dogs right there. Only Gates could have got away with it. That's true. John Wharton tells a great story about that too. But Gates Brown had a lot of trouble during his growing up years, but he was one heck of a nice guy when he came to Detroit, and was really a good ball player. He won a lot of games for the Tigers. I remember a doubleheader. He drove in the winning runs both games. Mm-hmm. He'd keep you hopping.
There's so many of those things that you would never see happen today in the game. That's some of the treasured history of the game, things that took place back then that you would never see today.
There must be one, Dan. Give us one.
Oh, gosh.
It's okay. Time statute of limitations. Just give us one.
I don't know. I'd have to think about that. It's so different today. There are just so many things that you don't see happening today that you did years and years ago. Now, I could tell you a lot of stories about my short stint with the Reds. That was different than anything I'd ever seen before, but I don't know if we want to put that on camera.
So I got to do this separately? You don't want to talk about Pete Rose, the day that he sort of disappeared? Things like that? He's thinking about it. We're working it. We're working it.
You know, Pete. There are a lot of things said about Pete. I never had a problem with Pete. I got along very well with Pete. It was the ownership at that time
Large shot.
that created a lot of the stories that many of us tell during our time with Cincinnati. Things that I never thought I would see in the game and haven't seen since, and understanding that when I started out in baseball, I had the good fortune to work for Mr. Bronfman, who was an incredibly wonderful owner. I don't know that there has been a finer owner in the game. He, Mr. Illich, Wayne Huizinga, and Mrs. Schott was really the antithesis of what ownership should be like in the game. And it was a wild ride over there. And I'll never forget one day in spring training, her nephew was the executive vice president of the ball club at that time. And we were in spring training, and I was sitting at my desk, and her nephew came into my office, and he said, me and Aunt Marge are going to need a car for about 4 or 5 days. And I said, okay, no problem. I'll call the rental agency and I'll get one over here for you. It's no problem. He said, no, we're going to take your car. And I said, why would you do that when I can just as easily go out and get you one? No, we're going to take your car. And I said, then what would you like me to do? And he said, I don't know, you go figure that one out. And that was sort of the mood, if you will, of how we had to deal with things in those days.
Did you have to ever deal with Shotzi, the dog?
Fortunately, no. But there's an interesting story about Shotzi. After, at the end of the season, my first year with Cincinnati, after Pete had been suspended, and Lou Pinella was going to become the manager of the Reds. Murray Cook, the general manager, had been let go, and Murray was the guy who had brought me to Cincinnati, so I really didn't know how long my tenure would last there. But before I left, Bob Quinn came in. He was the general manager, and he called me into his office, and he said, we're going to name Lou Pinella the manager, and we're going to fly him into Dayton because I don't want to create a scene in Cincinnati. So I need you to go down to Dayton and pick him up. He's coming in with his wife and kids, and I need you to take him out to Mrs. Schott's house. And we're going to have lunch there, and then we'll come back to the ballpark for the press conference. And I said, okay. So picked up Lou and his family, and we get to Mrs. Schott's house. And as some of you may recall, she was a car dealer. She owned Chevy dealerships. And if you worked for the Reds, if you were in a position where with other clubs you got a car, you typically didn't get one with the Reds. So we walked into the house, and it was a gorgeous house, and she wanted to show us what it was like out back with all of her land. And we walk out the back door, and there was a brand new Astro van, a minivan, that was parked right outside her back door. And we'd walk by it, and the windows were all slobbered on, and lo and behold, that was Shotzi's doghouse. So the dog got a minivan. We got nothing.
What's your point?
Life is a red.
Well, I can't thank both of you enough. This is spectacular.
Thank you.